Hello, everyone. Welcome to our very special webinar. My name is Logan Lenz, CEO of the venture studio for psychedelics known as Nucleus. Thank you for being here. And I'm very pleased today to be joined by Stefan, the CEO of Alts. If you're unfamiliar, it's an amazing resource that we will dive into. And it's a fantastic day to be talking really it in casual ways about the craziness that's going on in the world. But specifically for us and working with alts, it's a fantastic time to be talking about the psychedelics industry and other opportunities as Nucleus and alts has built a relationship, which we will dive into. But today we'll talk about markets. We'll talk about all sorts of opportunities and observations that everyone is making. And some of it will be about psychedelics, some of it will be about Nucleus. And also, more than anything, it'll be about Stefan and his knowledge at Alts about the broader landscapes and other industries. But I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be working with Alts, and let's just get right into it. As we think about an introduction, a lot's probably paved the path for you, Stefan, to launch something like Alts. But for those that are unfamiliar, why don't you provide the best intro and overview you can with your background, your history, how it led to Alts, a little bit about yourself and your interests, and we'll go and expand from there.
Absolutely. Thanks, and great to be here. So we here at Alts, we cover the world of alternative investments, and we try to go really, really broad with our definition of alternative investments. Most people think about alternatives as anything except a stock or a bond, and that's true, but they probably don't think about the wide world of investments that are available to them outside of the traditional asset classes. So we cover all sorts of stuff from artwork to rare books to coins and currencies. We look at the comic books market, farmland, music rights, sneakers, alternative real estate, toys, watches, micro private equity, and yes, psychedelics are a part of that. The world is so broad and it's so interesting. The way I kind of got into it was through micro private equity. I was the head of product at a company called Flippa.com. And we always thought of Flippa as, a place for buying and selling websites and other digital assets. But, after a while there, I realized that what people really want is they want a way to understand the value of this stuff, these websites for sale, these digital assets for sale. And so I created Flippa's very first due diligence program and kind of developed a framework for understanding the core value of different websites, how to view them, how to understand them from a cash flow perspective, from a traffic perspective. And about a year and a half into my time at Flippa, I realized this framework could actually be applied to a whole bunch of other alternative investments. And around that same time, we kind of just realized the drumbeat was getting pretty loud around alternatives. There was so much happening with NFTs and crypto, and it just kind of made me realize that if you really think broadly about what an investment is, there's markets where you didn't even realize there was markets before. And so I started writing on Substack and just started kind of writing about markets and companies and people that I thought, no one else was really writing about, or not. It was under discussed. And that's exactly what we try to do. We try to find the markets, the companies, the people that are under discussed, and talk about why we like them, why we don't like them. Basically, just kind of learn for ourselves, and then take our readers along for the ride. And that's exactly what we've been doing. And we're at about 90,000 readers now, or 90,000 community members, as we call them. And things are going really well.
That's amazing. I was going to get into the fast growth, specifically of this niche that you've carved out, and specifically alts.co to have that much of a readership has to have been a fascinating ride thus far. And it's only been a few years, I imagine. You started this in 2020.
It was a COVID baby, like so many other businesses. Nothing better to do here in Australia for about 2.5 straight months. You may have heard the news with the lockdowns back in the day, but yeah, really pretty much just cooped up in my apartment for about 3 straight months. So I just started writing.
Yeah.
I think the toughest part was when the lockdowns ended. All of a sudden we had freedom again, and all of a sudden I had this newsletter that I had I had to keep going every week, so that
Hmm.
was kind of a challenge. But yeah, no, we've been growing ever since. We're ripping right now. I mean, we're at 10 to 12,000 new subscribers per month. So we got the formula's working for sure.
That's amazing. And from the outside in, I guess someone would be curious about the model, right? Because we're interacting sort of as a now an investment opportunity from Nucleus as a portfolio, part of the portfolio that is under something called alts fund. So if you don't mind, maybe explain the broader model of alts as it is as a website, and then why you decided to go that route with the alts fund.
The fund is something that Wyatt, my co-founder, and I wanted to do from pretty much the moment we met and when we first started talking. The fact is that we had community members asking for exactly that, right? So, we do all this great research about, baseball cards and collectibles and, all sorts of new kind of esoteric, exotic markets. And after a while, people were just kind of like, why don't you guys just start a fund? Like, I'll give you money, you just go find the best of the best, I trust you. This is a great way to diversify. And we're like, yeah, we're way ahead of you. Like, that's exactly what we want to do. To do that, we needed to raise money ourselves, because that takes, bringing a fund to life, as you guys know, costs, well, it depends, but it's at least a couple 100,000 all in. And so we needed to go raise money ourselves. So we went right back to the community, and we did a raise with the community. Within the community, we have a bunch of venture investors and angels, and then so we basically scrabbled together a pre-seed round in 2021, and we used that money to accelerate our growth and to bring our Alts One fund to life. And so the Alts One fund is exactly what you said. It's basically us putting our money where our mouth is. We're going out, we're already doing the hard work to research these unique investment opportunities. Now we're actually investing in them ourselves. And that's it's a big part of what we do here at Alts.
And with so many, I mean, it seems like you have great writers, so many people probably paying attention with so many industries. Let's get right into why you found psychedelics specifically to be of interest. I know you've had some conversations with some of our team members leading up to some really great pieces that you've put together. But what's so fascinating specifically about the psychedelics industry?
Man, what's not fascinating about it? I mean, it checks kind of all the boxes for us, as far as, it's an investment opportunity that mainstream media isn't really talking about. You've got a lot of interesting companies and people. The dynamics are fascinating. And just the technology itself, what's happening on the ground, is mind blowing in some ways. So, I think we usually try to time issues with events that are happening in the world. And so I think it was last August, around the time of the Burning Man. I was looking at the calendar. I'm like, what would be a good kind of issue to, topic to cover for, this Burning Man weekend? And psychedelics just kind of came right to the, right to my mind, so to speak. And I didn't really know, kind of like where to start. The thing about what we do is, yeah, we do have a lot of great writers, like you said, but we don't pretend to know everything about all of these different markets and industries, like, at all. Like, that's not how this works, right? What we do is we try to find the experts. We try to find the companies and the people that know what they're talking about, and interview them, and kind of fold that into the pieces we write to really make it shine. And so I didn't know really almost anything about psychedelics. I knew it was a fascinating market. I'm a big fan of Michael Pollan and his latest book, and then the Netflix series. And I can't remember exactly how we got in touch with you guys and with Dustin. But man, I remember speaking with Dustin, and he took the call. He was super gracious with his time. He took the call from like a hotel in LA, and like it was like a terrible hour for him, a terrible hour for me here in Australia. But I mean, this conversation that we had, it was just, I mean, I knew right away, like, wow, this guy, like, he knows this stuff. And I mean, everything he was saying was just so eye-opening, so mind-blowing. And it's, to this day, one of our best issues I think we've ever done, is the psychedelics issue. It got a lot of people talking. We've had people that still come up to us every few weeks and talk about their favorite issues, and they'll mention the psychedelics one. So yeah, I mean, we're really glad to have met you guys, and to have you guys help in our not just our content, but also our investing strategy as well.
Yeah, and there seems to be so much going on with psychedelics. How do you maintain a close, you know, relationship with the ongoing developments and keep tabs on other things that you might want to write about specific? So let's just use psychedelics as the example. I'm curious about how their process works with that, but also when do you pivot and kind of let the audience know whether things are going well, going poorly? And then specifically, I know this is kind of becoming a loaded question, but where do you see the market broadening into? And that's kind of where Nucleus comes into play. But with drug development being one facet of it, how do you think this is going to evolve and mature as it relates to data, tech, and really the other refinements that are going to come with a more mature market?
Great questions. I mean, the answer may surprise you, but the fact is, I don't actually know yet. So here's kind of how we approach things. We because we cover so many alternative markets, we have the liberty to take many months in between, each time we talk about a topic. So we try to talk about a topic about twice per year. We try to check in about every 6 months or so, and then we'll add to that series. So right now, we've got 2 issues in our Investing in Psychedelics series. That's now a category, something we care about, something we talk about. It's also something we're invested in, as we'll talk about later. I keep tabs like any other normal kind of, always online consumer, a bunch of Google alerts and, just constant reading and other newsletters and Twitter and, you name it. But, I think when it comes time to kind of revisit this topic, which by the way, like there is so much happening right now that it actually would be a pretty good time to come back to it pretty soon, especially with some of the developments here in Australia, which, took everyone by surprise. But when we are ready to go back to, continue the series, like, we'll reach right back out to you guys. We'll reach out to some other companies and people doing interesting things and, just continue our learning and take everyone along for the ride.
I have another question about your investment thesis, again, because this fund is somewhat of a new area, I think, for when you think about crowdfunding and just markets in general. Where can I put my money? You've seen real estate become popular, but you guys are sort of on the forefront of your specific niche. What is the thesis and the vision? And I guess more specifically, if you want to broaden the question, you could maybe align that with what you saw in Nucleus specifically and how that aligned with that vision.
Our vision is for our Alts One fund. Our vision is pretty straightforward. We're looking for criminally undervalued assets over a 10-year period. So it's a 10-year fund. It is not a fund for people who want quick liquidity and quick flips and exits and that kind of thing. This is like we're looking for. I mean, it's a $20,000 minimum. We're looking for folks who are in it for the long haul, right? I mean, this isn't like stocks or even like real estate for that matter, where the window you can hang on for a few years and actually do pretty well. Like we're looking for stuff that's that's good for the long term. So right away we're looking at asset classes that are like they say about real estate. It's not about what when you sell, it's about when you buy, right? That's how you really make your money. Is you have to buy well. And so we've developed a whole bunch of proprietary, formulas. We have a massive Airtable full of data that we use to basically figure out like where the best opportunities are across the alternative investment landscape. This liberty is thrilling. It gives us, I mean, it's basically, having an alternative investment hedge fund allows us to get into stuff that other funds don't touch with like a 10-foot pole. I mean, and it's a small fund too. So, I mean, it would be a rounding error, right? Our fund size would be a rounding error for a lot of other funds.
Sure.
But that also means we're not competing with those funds for the assets, right? Like we're going out and we're buying vinyl records, owned by John Lennon for $50,000 at auction, right? Like there's no other, like funds don't do that, right? So it's like, we don't have a whole lot of competition on that front. Now, when it comes to Nucleus, we basically rewrote our rules to be able to invest in you guys. This was not something we had originally planned on doing. We also had some slight restrictions from our own investors about our ability to invest in startups. We had to clear a lot of it with legal, and it was we basically broke the mold when we invested in you guys. But the reason we invested in you guys is because we were just so impressed with our chats with Dustin and what you guys were up to and what you're doing. And you guys are just so clearly on the forefront of everything happening with psychedelic and the intersection of psychedelics and venture investing and startups. It was just like a no-brainer. We knew we had to make it happen. So you guys are the only startup we've ever invested in. We do consider startups an alternative investment. We certainly promote crowdfunding startups like crazy. But in terms of where we've actually put our money, as of this moment, as of this day, you guys are actually the only startup that we've invested in through the Alts One fund. So
I did not know that. So that's amazing. Yes. Thank you. I'm even more gracious for the backing and the trust and the confidence. So that's fantastic. It actually was a perfect segue because we are crowdfunding, and I was going to ask specifically how you categorize something like crowdfunding. It sounds like you categorize us as a startup, but we do happen to crowdfund. So when you promote crowdfunding, like, how do you guys kind of look at that? Is that an alternative asset? Is that something that you find, especially with the Jobs Act, to change and kind of like invigorate the market of individual investment in the future? How is that going to change over time? Give me everything you want to share about crowdfunding from your perspective.
I think what's happening with crowdfunding is fascinating. There's a couple things going on. I mean, crowdfunding is certainly nothing new. Kickstarter's been around for ages. Indiegogo, these platforms are nothing new, right? What's I think happened recently is a couple things. I think that number one, around the world, the crowdfunding laws are really starting to change. So Europe has some very favorable laws. Canada has some pretty weird laws around crowdfunding. US is a great place to do crowdfunding. Australia has great crowdfunding platforms. They vary like crazy from country to country. But the point is that all of these, for the most part, allow basically retail investors, non-accredited, non-sophisticated investors to invest. And that's huge. The ability for retail investors to invest in startups is tremendous. I am a huge fan and proponent of it. And from a legal standpoint, the world has come a long way and continues to come a long way. You also see, we do a lot of research on investment opportunities in different countries that people aren't talking about. So we recently did an issue on investing in the Philippines. I was there for a week, kind of, figuring out what the startup scene looks like down there. And lo and behold, in the last 6 months, the Philippines has their very first crowdfunding platform legalized now by the government. More coming online. So this is all happening as we speak. But the other thing that's happening with crowdfunding, and this has only happened in the past year or so, is that the quality of companies that are crowdfunding has gone way up. So, it kind of used to be, and this isn't a fair judgment, but a lot of people perceived a lot of the companies that resorted to crowdfunding as exactly that. They're resorting because they couldn't find, they couldn't get, proper venture capital, right? And, to be fair, that I think in the old days, there were a lot of kind of questionable business models and companies that, maybe weren't the best investment opportunity that went to crowdfunding. Whatever the past, you think about the past, that has changed big time. Because ever since venture funding kind of, started drying up about a year ago, the quality of companies that have been on, platforms like WeFunder, Republic, has just gone through the roof. I mean, we see awesome companies that are crowdfunding, true hidden gems. Yeah, there's still a lot of, junk and what have you, but there's a lot of good companies that have crowdfunded. We've crowdfunded ourselves. You guys are doing it. There's all sorts of great stuff out there. And so that's a big part of what we do is absolutely, is identify these companies, find out what their deal is, understand the valuation, make sure it makes sense, look at the competition, look at the team, look at the market, and put all the pieces together for our readers. And that's a big thing. We do that every single Thursday. We basically highlight a new startup. You guys obviously have been one of them, but there's all sorts of fun and interesting startups crowdfunding at this moment. And so, yeah, it's a really exciting time for crowdfunding.
I mean, you just touched on some of the variables you look at, but oftentimes, especially as we promote Nucleus's own campaign, there's a little bit of a hang up on, how do I know what the terms are? And if this is a good investment, what my return is going to be. You just walk through what you look at. Do you guys usually also advise and recommend the best ways to, evaluate the investment opportunity itself? And I mean, you mentioned what you look at specifically, but what's a good like cheat sheet or hack if people are starting to get into crowdfunding that you usually like to share with these newbies?
It's interesting because there's two ways to look at it. You can look at like the quantitative, and you can look at the qualitative. Now, the quantitative side of startups that are crowdfunding is usually pretty lacking. These aren't like public companies with a ton of data out there, and you can analyze the P ratio and like all sorts of figures. It doesn't really work like that. Getting the data is really tough. There are companies that we know and love that are attempting to quantify the value of crowdfunding startups. One that I'll drop here, you guys may have heard of, is King's Crowd. We're big fans of these guys. We think they're basically onto something big. They're patenting a process for quantitative analysis of startups, and I think that's great. We don't do as much on the quantitative side. Where we shine is on the qualitative side, on the analysis, right? So there's a baseline quantitative expectation, right? Which is basically like, how much are they making? What's the valuation? High level, a few basic numbers to make sure we're in the same ballpark. As we all know, some of these companies that are crowdfunding are great companies, but the valuations they're asking for are absurd. There's lots of reasons for that we won't get into. We don't really look at those companies because valuation matters a lot when you're crowdfunding. But once you kind of got those baseline numbers, that's when the analysis kicks in, right? This is really important for startups because it's such a gray area with a lot of this stuff, right? It's not just black and white. The company's making X, or they've been around for Y. This stuff is very fluid, and getting to know the companies and getting to know their strategy, that really matters. And that's where we shine. That's where we excel. So, I mean, yeah, if you're looking for tips, I would say, sign up at alts.co and you'll start getting startup analysis in your inbox. But, yeah, we kind of take more of a qualitative approach versus a quantitative approach.
Amazing. Super helpful. Now let's shift to the current macroeconomic conditions. It's kind of the elephant in the room. And that's why you guys are so helpful and insightful under these uncertain times. So it's rough out there, banks imploding, inflation heightening, startups, you mentioned this earlier, having a hard time finding capital. How is your specific approach to investing changed, whether that's personally or through the fund?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's a pretty crazy time. On one hand, all of this is good for what we do because it's all, anytime people are skittish about traditional markets, alternatives, a lot of that attention and money and time and capital pours into alternatives, and now is no different. So the problem with that is that the best time because alternative markets are down too, right? So it's like the best time to invest in alternatives, best time to start paying attention is yesterday, right? Not today. But you got to start somewhere. You got to start at some point. In terms of what we're doing is we're actually we're looking to shift more towards alternative opportunities that have cash flow. And it's funny because like this is actually the world I came from, is micro private equity, and so we would evaluate assets based on the cash flow that they're spinning off, the yield basically. There's so much interesting stuff happening in terms of alternative investments with like debt financing, private credit, private debt. There's also, just the other day I heard a crazy stat that got us thinking. I learned that country of Brazil, is the world leader in plastic surgery, right? Both on a total and per capita basis. They love the plastic surgery down there. I don't really know why. They already look beautiful to me, but I'm not going to judge. Point is, there's a lot of plastic surgery happening in Brazil. But traditional banks do not finance it. They refuse. They can't. So there's an entire industry now popping up around basically private lending for plastic surgery loans, and just in Brazil. This is exactly the kind of stuff that an alternative investment fund would love to get into. And so we're thinking about our second fund, which we're probably going to call Alts 2, would be focused on opportunities like that. So yield, cash flow producing, income producing alternative investments. Totally different from Alts 1, which is about, again, criminally undervalued assets without any real cash flow, but that are worth a whole lot more in 10 years. So that's kind of how we're shifting our thinking. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to go a little bit more upmarket in terms of our opportunities that we're exploring. And so what I mean by upmarket is, you look at the world of alternatives, and you've kind of got two worlds, right? You've got the old school and the new school, right? So the old school is a lot of the stuff we just talked about, like venture capital, like private debt, private credit, private equity for the most part. And then you've got this whole new world of, wine and artwork and whiskey and all the fun stuff, right? Those worlds are very separate from an institutional standpoint. Basically, institutions have really not a ton of appetite yet for the new world of alternatives, right? They may in 5 to 10 years, but right now they're not investing in baseball cards or vinyl records. That's fine. That's what our fund is for. But at the same time, like, we also want to start moving into the markets where it's a little more traditional, a little less on the cutting edge of what's happening. We don't see it as a step backwards. We see it as like, look, the old world of alts is not going anywhere, and it's going to be around for a while. And we kind of just like leapfrogged into this new esoteric world, and we kind of jumped over a lot of the more traditional stuff. So we're trying to actually redirect towards the more traditional stuff, which I think right now is especially important. So that's kind of how we're thinking about strategy right now.
Yeah, that's awesome to see the difference. I mean, you obviously are moving quickly and anticipating the future, and that's why I think so many people subscribe and get so much value out of your newsletter. So let's now shift to one of the more popular alternative assets, Bitcoin, crypto. It's always all over the news. It's always super volatile. But as a whole, how are you thinking that market's looking? Web3, the future of the decentralized finance. Like, tell us your take, especially because of the recent, I think, volatility and, like I said, the bank situation and inflation. I think everyone's got a different opinion. I'd love to hear yours.
Man, I'll just preface by saying my opinion means basically just as much as the next person. So, like, I mean, look, it's a crazy world. We try to make sense of this the best we can. Let's take a step back for a minute. And, like, let's look at what happened with Web3 and over the past few years. So, like, right after we started the newsletter, like, the Web3 world basically fell into our laps, right? I don't think anyone expected NFTs to take off to the degree that they did. I think that we jumped in like head first. I mean, no question about it. It's an entirely new market, digital ownership. Was it overhyped? It's still overhyped? It remains to be seen. I do think that, yeah, humans probably got a little ahead of ourselves there for a while during the NFT craze and the Web3 craze.
Sure.
I think in many ways it's a hammer in search of a nail, but it's still a very interesting hammer. And I do believe that there's enough gravity around this stuff I mean, it's never gonna die. It's never gonna go away. It may not be on the same trajectory it was on in 2020 and 2021. But I think you'd be foolish to think that this stuff ever, goes away. So we're kind of taking an approach right now where we're just watching the markets, watching the NFT markets. We're kind of looking for the interesting stuff happening in Web3. There's a few areas that interest me and places that I think Web3 can truly add value. I think one is in music royalties and rights and film rights. And so a lot of the content we've put out there is centered around how we can fix what are obviously broken systems around royalties through Web3. I think that there's something to be said about Web3 and ticketing. Maybe not as much as the hype makes it out to be, but I think there's something there. But we don't really have like a hard stance on like, yeah, we're bulls or we're bears. It's just, look, the technology's here. It went through a hype cycle. It's now in a trial disillusionment, whatever you call it, right? It'll come back at some point. It's already starting to in some ways. We're just here to observe, to analyze, and to, like I said, take people along for the ride. We don't really have a vested interest in like this working or not working. And the answer is somewhere in the middle, regardless. So we kind of take an agnostic approach, but a very, very interested agnostic approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm, as everyone would, I imagine, knows at this point, if you know Nucleus, I'm bullish on the blockchain technology. We built a protocol on top of stacks that we hope to utilize more in the future as it relates to a more efficient healthcare system. But that resides on the Bitcoin blockchain, which has taken over kind of the NFT craze recently with the ordinal stuff. But that's a little too detailed for this conversation. But specifically on where Nucleus resides, what's your thought on the future of healthcare and maybe how something like blockchain technology could change it, make it better? Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. It's a small opinion, but it's based in exactly what you'd expect. I mean, look, ultimately, one of the biggest benefits of blockchain is transparency of data, plain and simple. And if there's any industry that could really benefit from data transparency and portability, transferability, I mean, it's healthcare, right? Like, and not just in the U.S. either, right? I mean, here in Australia, we got a great healthcare system, but man, like, there's sometimes the systems don't talk to each other as easily as they could. Yeah, I think that alone is worth exploring, pursuing, and I love what you're doing there. I need to learn more about it, and I look forward to learning more about it. But yeah, I think it's commendable that you're going down that path.
Amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to mention about alts, the fund, maybe the investment into Nucleus, or any other projects that you have working on or issues that you're excited about that you'd like to promote?
What's next for us, one thing we're looking to do is live events. And this is something that we are just chomping at the bit to do. So I can't announce exactly what we're doing, but I will say it involves a trip to Mexico and a tequila investment that we made recently. So we bought 6 barrels of full barrels of tequila down in Tequila, Mexico through a blockchain-based company called House of Rare. And we're actually, pretty excited because this, tequila has a lot of the same properties as wine and whiskey in terms of the appreciation. And so this is a no-brainer for the fund. But the great thing about tequila is it only takes about 3 years for the stuff to mature and really add, become more valuable, as opposed to wine can be a decade plus. Whiskey can be 40 years, you're sitting on stuff, right? And it's a lot more valuable after 40 years, but who has the time for that, right? So tequila kind of has like the same appreciation properties without the time, which is awesome. So we love it as an investment. We love this company. Again, they're a blockchain-based tequila investing company called House of Rare. And we're looking to put on an event with them. We've been talking lately. I don't have the hard details just yet, but this would involve, basically a small intimate group, maybe 10, 15, 20 folks, coming down to Mexico into tequila to see the distilleries, do some tequila tasting, maybe take some tours, some helicopter rides, that kind of thing. And we're going to be co-hosting this event. So we're going to have more to share on this real soon, but this is probably going to be happening in October of this year. This will be our very first live event. And man, we look to do more of these in the future, with all sorts of different companies. Man, maybe you guys, we'd love to do
I was just going to say, that sounds incredible. So
yeah,
I can't wait to hear more about that. That's exciting. And finally, how might our viewers get in touch with you or alts? Feel free to plug the newsletter, how people can subscribe, all that good stuff.
Pretty straightforward. Just go to alts.co and sign up for the newsletter. That's it. We're a newsletter-based community. Once you sign up, I will send you a personal reply. You're in. I think you'll like what you get. So just go to alts.co and sign up, and we look forward to having you on board.
Yep. And as a reader myself, I always love the issues. So keep up the good work, and everyone should be really excited to get all that information. But Stefan, thanks for joining us. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We hope you learned a lot about alternative assets and specifically the opportunity to invest in Nucleus. We are crowdfunding. The URL is below, invest.withnucleus.com. You can get some more information about our mission, the journey we've taken so far, and the investment opportunity. So reach out. You can not only through that site or the WeFunder campaign itself. You can always email us at hello@withnucleus.com. I will personally also respond, just like Stefan said, just because we want to make sure we're building a family here. But Stefan, thank you so much for being here. Any final thoughts before we go?
Thank you for having us. And like I said, you guys are special. You're literally the only startup we've ever invested in. That won't last forever, but for now, enjoy it. So
that's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stefan, for joining us from Australia so early. And looking forward to what alts becomes moving forward. So keep up the good work.
Thanks, Logan.
Bye-bye.